Hello, my name is Tim Bernard, and this is Beyond the Headlines, where we take a much different look at the world around us, especially than the high-priced media has. Of course, we can only touch a few of the subjects that I have at my website, which is right here, bsfreepress.net for Big Sky Free Press. Where I probably put up about 50 or so articles every week, 40 to 50, and then there's videos and other stuff. I'd urge you to go there. You can tell people about it. It's something easy to do while we still have the internet. Remember, they've begun the switch over to the United Nations, which is not a good sign for us. Just another present from Obama, part of his legacy of betrayal to the people, but not to his masters, which are not the people, which are the ruling elite, just like Hillary Clinton. And we just had the big election this week. This is a Seattle grandmother, a fraud investigator. She's a Democrat, actually, but she's an honest person. And she said that there's tons of evidence of voter fraud on the Democratic side, which we knew the polls have been lying the whole time. I've reported about that and had tons of articles about it. But the real thing is it's harder to steal in a landslide because they don't completely own it yet. They're getting very close, though. And it's unlikely that Hillary even won the popular vote, even though right now, plus they haven't even finished counting. They've left out about 8%. That was the last number that I heard. Now it's probably getting pretty close. Now we'll see what they report the numbers as, which is, of course, whatever they're told to report, that's what they report, because they are paid handsomely. But she did Hacking Democracy, a documentary that's been on HBO and other places, and I think it's blackboxvoting.org. Just look up Bev Harris, that's her name, and she can fill you in on what is going on. Of course, we are not the bought-off press with multi-million-dollar contracts and any funding at all. The whole crew here is righty and lefty, and the rest of myself. It's me, myself, and I guess, are the whole crew. But we reach a fair amount of people, and there's tons of us all around the world doing this, waking people up. Whether it's one person just talking to their neighbor, another, and it's getting disseminated, and the information's getting out. And I've played that clip before of Hillary saying that we're in an information war and we're losing. Her side is losing that war. And the media did everything they could to divert the attention from the great stories that not only WikiLeaks, but Project Veritas brought out that video of Democratic operatives bragging about how they steal elections. And we also have Larry Nichols. He was one of the Clinton handlers until he found out how dirty they were. What finally got it for him was that they were running drugs. Oh, and who were they running drugs with? Well, Papa Bush. You can look that all up. A DEA agent went to jail over trying to expose this. Celly Castillo reported on him a long time ago. And they were so sure that the child of darkness was going to get in. This was the famous picture from Newsweek. They printed a bunch of them up in advance. And now they're a collector's item. I guess going for a fair amount of money. But Donald Trump did win. He's not in until he's in. We need to keep praying for him. I pray for Obama every day. This was a CIA director during Ronald Reagan's time. He came out of World War II in the OSS, which was the precursor to the CIA. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. This is what they push. This is a narrative. And Trump can't tell you everything that he knows. And I don't agree with everything that he's mentioned and is doing. But at least he'll allow freedom of speech and freedom of religion, which is not something Clinton openly came out and said that she was against that. And of course, Obama, we now have 8 years to prove that he is against it. And of course, their buddy, George Soros, Nazi war criminal, who funds this stuff, who funded the riots in Ferguson, funded the overthrow in the Ukraine, is funding the riots that we have around the country today. It says that this guy is allowed to operate out in the open, and that the left doesn't expose him for what he openly is. I mean, he openly bragged about selling out his fellow Jews during World War II on 60 Minutes. But we are the resistance, the V for victory, the V for peace from the Vietnam War, the V that the partisans during World War II in France marked on walls and other public places to let the people know that there was a resistance and they knew who the traitors were. The first global revolution, I mean, they openly write about it. This is public. There's nothing, I mean, not everything is public, and especially with the explosion now in our time, it's getting a little harder. But now, while they're trying to reel it back in, we have so many more opportunities and ways to expose them, and people in the system waking up. But part of what they've already done is divided the world and our country, in the world into 10 units, for the 10 kings. We're living in biblical times, even though a lot of people don't want to talk about it. And then we have the FEMA districts. You can look this up. I mean, our country's divided into 10 units right now. These are the 10 FEMA districts, and we are coming to you from Global Region 1, FEMA District 10. That's where I am today. And this book was written over 40 years ago. Oh, and I have a permanent link to the book. It's free, online now. And I have a permanent link to the page where they talk about using climate as an issue. And in my lifetime, it's been global cooling, global warming, and since that's changing again, well, let's just call it climate change, because they think the people are so stupid, and they've got people who will just keep saying it. I mean, I grew up, for the longest time, they just kept saying that smoking was either good for you or they didn't know that it was bad for you. I mean, that whole campaign. And of course, so then they try to pin people who point out the fallacies in climate change. Global warming is what they called it, even though it's not warming anymore. Hasn't been actually for quite a while. And remember, their premise, I mean, it's so easy to destroy their argument because they try to say that the sun is constant. And while we have such a limited understanding of the sun, I mean, it's pathetic how wimpy our real grasp of the sun is. The one thing we do know, it's not constant, but of course they say it is. But those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it, for this game has been played for millennia, since the dawn of time. What's going on now, what went on then is going on now. It's just a little different, but the main structure of the game remains the same. Like this is right out of the Old Testament. This goes on every summer in Northern California. It's called Bohemian Grove, the Cremation of Care. And you go, well, that's just Northern California. Well, a lot of our elite go there. That's why it's a big deal. And it's still one of the most popular things. I still run into people who don't know about this. Of course, it was even on 60 Minutes, but they didn't describe exactly what went on here. And the Seattle Times was in the Seattle Times once. And they actually showed this, but it was a very small picture. But they called it a Druidic ceremony. This was during the Reagan era. And so that's pagan. So you think that, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was that it's an all-male thing. A lot of homosexuality there. Richard Nixon wrote about it in his memoirs. Helmut Schmidt from West Germany wrote about it in his memoirs. So it's not like maybe. This place exists. This is what goes on there. This is the lake in effigy, where they bring the child in effigy on a little boat. There's the altar, a bunch of people dressed up in priestly garbs. Then on this side of the lake is where all the men are. This is just was such a good slide. I wanted to save it. This just shows the decline of the priesthood. Since Vatican II, 100,000 have left. It's not just because of that, though. It's also because of this time the devil is peaking, and he's at his strongest and has the most influence he's had at any time in history. And look at the number of seminarians. Over the last 50 years, they went from almost 40,000 to just under 5,000. It's easy to see what's going on. And George Soros exploits the Catholics, and he calls us useful idiots. Because they have no respect for any of us. That's why they openly say what they're going to do. I mean, just openly. I mean, most people, of course, deny it, but it's feigned ignorance. Because they know that the truth is dangerous. I mean, take a look at Jesus on the cross. They crucified him to scare people off. If you follow this guy, this is what's going to happen. And of course, that's what Jesus said, remember? Jesus said that except that you pick up your cross every day and carry it, you have no part of me. And too many people nowadays spell the cross comfortable. And that's why there's two crosses in the word truth. The first one is to seek the truth and to find out what it is. The second cross is much bigger. Once you know what the truth is, then you have to pass that knowledge on. And so that's why people like to stay away from me, because I take away people's ignorance. Lay it out in very simple terms, how it works, what's going on, so you have, our Archbishop doesn't laugh anymore. Here's the Pope getting in bed with a dragon. Isn't it interesting? China's coming to power. What is its symbol? The dragon. Written 2,000 years ago. From La Salette, remember, the church-approved prophecy from a little shepherd girl. You gotta love God. Using little shepherd girls to enlighten the world, both from La Salette and Fatima. But this is a deal that they're making with Beijing and the Patriotic Church, it's called, to give more power over the selection of bishops, and they'll have a veto power. The government will. So, and that'll play into what happens later on here on the global level. Now here we are looking at the stats for the last vote. It's interesting to note here, this is the Catholic vote is up on top. So, well, under Bush, at least this second time in '04, I mean, while Bush is a traitor, at least he allowed us to practice our religion. He didn't really hamper free speech, though, of course, he did implement propaganda and promoted it. Did stories during his time about them being caught spending more than $1 billion on propaganda, both not only like within the media, but also selling storylines into sitcoms and evening shows and stuff. So it's very sophisticated, which we were warned about. But most of the time, the Catholics have been and there's no way that you can be a Christian and support abortion. There's just no way. That's child infanticide. That's the sacrifice of a child on the altar of lust and convenience. There's no negotiating that point. There's no maybe. There's no fuzzy area. And I'm not judging you, as our Pope likes to talk about, and other people like to say, oh, don't judge people. I'm not. But I'm warning you. If you think the path to heaven is by promoting abortion, which there are many people who call themselves Catholics do, that's your prerogative. It's free will. But I'm not going to. I'm not going to follow you, because that's not how I see it. And we can all go our own way. But even with this Pope, who even he doesn't agree with abortion. Though he does coddle up, and I've done some stories of him coddling up to some abortionists, especially that woman from Italy. Holy mackerel. But anyway, the Clinton, Trump, though, because Clinton, I mean, they just mock religious people. At least they finally came around, but you can see this real split here coming on. I mean, even with Clinton openly saying they were going to change the church and all this kind of crap to be what, maybe covetous, lying, murdering thieves like she is. There were still 45% of Catholics voted for her. That's unreal. Now the evangelicals, while they need some help in their worship service, at least they got this right. I mean, they've been voting on the right side, at least, in all the elections, or the better side. I mean, Bush was a traitor. I didn't vote for him. In 2003, to show you what's been going on over there, the Christians in Iraq numbered 1.4 million. In 2016, there are less than 300,000 left. So well over a million, 1.1 million plus Christians left or were murdered, because we haven't been taking them in, and none of the other countries around there take them in. Here's one, 13,000 plus Syrian refugees so far in 2016. That's up almost 700% from last year, 2015. Oh, and 99.1% are Muslim. All the evil in the world is due to lukewarm Catholics. And believe me, there are plenty of lukewarm Catholics. Whether it's the trads, who think they're so righteous because they go to a Latin Mass, and I love the High Mass. I'll be going in a few hours. But I also go to the Novos Ordos. Less than a year from now will be this constellation that hasn't come together in 7,000 years. And it's right out of the book of Revelation. Where it starts, it's Revelation 12, the very beginning. The woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars. It's Virgo. And it's interesting. It also talks about the womb, Jupiter coming into the womb. There's some interesting stuff, more than we have here laid out. But they know what's going on. Jesus and Mary are in charge, and their Sacred Hearts will rule after this purification. We're not at the end of the world. This is not the end of the world. You're reading Scripture wrong again, or you're free to say that I am. We'll see who's right in the end. But we're almost on a period of peace. But between now and that point is the purification. How bad the purification depends on us. God gives us enough grace to deal with these problems. But if we don't, which is our free will, to not follow like the peace plan from Fatima, the first 5 Saturdays of the month. It's so simple. Do you think Naaman would have been healed, the Syrian, if he hadn't listened to Elisha and bathed 7 times in the Jordan? Or how about the Israelites when they were told to, Moses made a long pole that had a serpent on it, and they had to look at it and be healed from these snake bites. And there's other examples. When we obey, things are better for us. How did we fall? We fell by disobeying God. And this was a warning from 400 years ago. Satan will reign almost completely. And you can see that coming. It's not quite their time. That's one of the reasons Hillary's been held back. There's still enough prayers and stuff in the world. Things have to happen. But they'll be in complete control in a little over 2 decades. That's how I look at it. So roughly around in the 30s is when our side there'll be a slaughter on our side, which is what's spoken of in the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation. They'll be allowed to take over the saints in the 7th verse of the 13th chapter. You can look it up. And then they'll be in complete control. We're all here right now, but it's Alpha and Omega, first and last. And then they talk about the Masonic sects, and this is right out of the book of Revelation. Father Zudak getting this cross, he's been checked out by the Vatican. They don't know why it's happening. It's a supernatural thing. Now, so this had to have happened. This happened in 1999. That's like when a lot more happened in 1999 than the world understands. And go ahead and read the 6th chapter. The angels are sent to the 4 corners of the wind, but they're told not to hurt the earth until we mark our side. And that's what this is. He now has the full stigmata. And like I mentioned just briefly, the key to beginning to open up the book of Revelation is, as our Lord said, Alpha and Omega, first and last. We are first and we are last. In the middle is their time. And you can clearly see that, how it builds through the 12th chapter. And then the 13th chapter is where the 2 biggest antichrists are. Every president, every pope, they always say, oh, this is the Antichrist. And no doubt someday they'll call me an Antichrist. Because I don't agree with some people. I'm just trying to get people to initially let's just try to obey the 10 Commandments. I mean, because whether you're a Christian, Muslim, or a Jew, supposedly you believe in them. So let's just start there with the 10 Commandments and just a little bit of truth, because that's one of the commandments. Yeah, and this is from Our Lady of La Salette, talking about the Mass will have to go underground, because it will be outlawed for 3.5 years, just as it says in the 12th chapter of the book of Daniel, the daily sacrifice. That's what the Mass is a sacrifice. And of course, a lot of Protestants can't handle that. Oh, he's suffering. No, he suffers because of all of our ingratitude. Jesus suffers today because of all of our sin. So that's what we need to make the change. And anyway, we're in for some interesting times. And if you can't handle that side of it, I mean, we also have, this is General Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, World War II, and a two-term president, and his farewell address to the nation, which I have permanent link on it at my website, because a lot of people have not read it or don't remember it, where he talks about it getting into every this system getting into every facet of our life. Now, he just called it the military-industrial complex, which is a lower part of it. The very highest are the money changers who fund the military-industrial complex, who fund wars, who fund nations. That's how they make lots of money. Just follow the money. Bill Gates has never been the richest man in the world. Never. The richest families count their money in trillions. This will be the last time we have to look at this garbage, hopefully, because Hillary's and the Clintons should be done. This is her as Secretary of State, grinding with this big black mama over, and look at everybody smiling and laughing and thinking it's so funny and cute, because Hillary was a switch hitter. And this is some of the stuff that's come out in the WikiLeaks, was this art depicting cannibalism hangs in John Podesta's campaign office. I mean, how sick is that? Not to mention, in his home, he's got a whole wall dedicated to nude children. I mean, oh. And here's one of their buddies, where he went and had a dinner, this spiritual dinner. You can look that up. There's some articles about that. And this artist and Lady Gaga, who's going to be doing the Super Bowl. I mean, and if you don't think Lady Gaga's involved with demons, just read the words to her song Judas. Just type in Lady Gaga, Judas, and read them for yourself. Clinton Cash, if you've never seen that, now hopefully they'll go on after into the next year, and the FBI and the NYPD, who have tons of information on this, will bring forth some charges, because what they did to Haiti, the amount of money they took from Haiti when those people were suffering, and still are, partly because of all the money that they stole. Clinton lied in the debate. Not 90% did not go to the Haitians. 90% went to the foundation, less than 10%. And even left-wing, like the New York Times and the Huffington Post said, yeah, all of the information that was put forth in that documentary and book were accurate. And I just saw a thing where Clinton is blaming Comey, the FBI director, who let her off the hook for losing, when in reality he was used first he just let her off from crimes. Then the second time, that whole thing was a ruse, which we told you about and explained, to divert away from all the WikiLeaks, the damning stuff that was coming out on WikiLeaks, and the unbelievable footage that this James O'Keefe got from Democratic operatives bragging about how they steal elections and have been doing it for decades. And but now they don't have complete control, because we had a clip of Soros saying, yeah, Donald Trump will win the popular vote. See, and he really did. I mean, right now they're reporting that Clinton did, but they shaved so many votes. But it was such a landslide that even with all of their cheating, Trump still won. But he said, but Clinton's selection as president is a done deal. And he's talking about the Electoral College. And so we'll see what happens. Until Trump is actually in, he's not in. But I think they would have a problem if they try something funny. And I'd be surprised if they don't try something. These next couple months are going to be very interesting. And Soros openly bragged about funding the Ferguson riots, I think 30 million. He's funding the stuff going on in Oregon and around with his opensource.org group. He's a big buddy of Obama's, you know, because Obama's his boy, just like Hillary. This is a great cartoon up here on November 7th. After the election, I will cry for unity. Then the next day, Trump won. And now, I mean, some of the stuff that they said that these guys were saying was unbelievable. And remember, everybody, even the supposed fake news, Fox News, was slanting it that Trump was losing. See, they did that so that if they were able to pull it off, then, well, that's what they all said. They all said he was going to lose, so he did. Here's some stuff about the dead people voting. Chicago, 119 dead people voted 229 times. Now that's good. And here's some stuff about the Portland riots down there. And of course, there's such loving people always trying to say that Trump supporters were violent. But that's all they do is talk about killing Trump. I mean, it's just everywhere. On the mainstream news, on the social media, it's everywhere. I mean, if people had been coming out saying stuff like that, you even talked negative. If you didn't say something positive about Obama, they were coming after you back in 2008. Well, this is kill your local Trump supporter even. I mean, it's just pathetic what goes on. Here's gangs of teen girls attacking and robbing shoppers in Chicago as the lawlessness continues. I still believe there's going to be an economic collapse. They allowed it to slide through because Trump was surging so much. They had hoped to have one of their puppets running against Hillary. And then they could have dumped everything onto Obama, and either Hillary or the Rhino would have been okay, because they play a game of heads they win, tails we lose. So the great masses of the people will more easily fall victims to a big lie than a small one. You know, big lies like 9/11, JFK, to name but a few. I mean, we'll talk more about them both a little later. Or Planned Parenthood. You're just trying to tell people that Planned Parenthood is a eugenics operation out to kill blacks, founded by a racist. And of course, it was Hillary Clinton who claimed that Trump was this big racist, while she went to and adored a Ku Klux Klan Grand Dragon, Senator Robert Byrd. The Democrats were the party of segregation. I mean, that's just history in my own lifetime. And I'm not that old. But here's a quote from the founder of Planned Parenthood. Colored people are like weeds and are to be exterminated. That's why most Planned Parenthoods are in their districts of town. I mean, we've done stuff where people have called in and said, I'd like to give you money targeted towards blacks. And then, sure, no problem with that. Over 51% of black children are aborted. You never hear Oprah and all these other Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, none of these other prima donnas, because they've all sold their souls. You don't hear Obama talking about it. He doesn't give a damn. The first thing he did was help to kill more blacks in the womb. That's the first thing he did. And it's not the only thing he did. This is a great one. JFK, who was probably one of the last presidents who really did a lot for us, in my view, taking on the banking system. Anyway, his thing was, by the end of the decade, we will put a man on the moon. And of course, for Obama, by the end of my presidency, we will put a man into a woman's bathroom. And here's the BBC is under fire for the Transgender Diaries, program aimed at little kids. I mean, the indoctrination, the social engineering that's going on, and the lack of people warning people about this. I mean, I would not let your children watch TV, period. Other than maybe real selective shows, and you have to be there. And you need to tell them why. You just can't tell them, hey, you just can't watch this. You have to tell them how evil the world is. This is a reality. You gotta warn your kids. They're taking over by taking over the children. That's how you take over a country. No, you can't take it over in a few years, in a few decades. But they took over the education system. They've taken over the mass media, but we're killing them on the internet. And that's why they're coming after us. Just as I've told you for a long time. I mean, there's been a huge war behind the scenes that really doesn't make it out, much of it, into the mainstream at all. And while we're on Obama's legacy, here's some of his legacy. This is Syria, right here. Another war that we went in just because, really, because they weren't a part of the global monetary system. Neither was Libya. Now it's a completely failed state. Iraq, I mean, it's a complete joke. We've been in Iraq for, how long have we been in Iraq? Almost 15 years, or I guess it was a little later. It's only about 13 years in Iraq. Give or take a few months, huh? Aldous Huxley, boy, you should read his, or listen to his speech to, he's the author of Brave New World, a big UN guy, and he gave this chilling speech in Berkeley to shrinks, future shrinks and psychologists, postgraduate level people, where he talks about us just being complete sheep. But he says facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. And feigned ignorance is a sin. And Jefferson's warning, a nation which expects to be ignorant and free and in a state of civilization expects that which never was and never will be. And if you don't warn the people, this is going out to all leaders, both secular and religious, their blood, not could be, will be on your hands. You will have to make an accounting if you are a leader. The bankster takeover just keeps rolling on. Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes its laws. They sit in the background and do their manipulation and put the puppets out front. And this is a book that Carroll Quigley wrote. He's one of America's big historians from Georgetown University. Here's a little quote from Bill Clinton that he gave in his first inaugural address, if you want to look it up. "I heard that call clarified by a professor I had named Carroll Quigley." And here's one of Quigley's quotes. "The powers of financial," he calls it capitalism, but it's really, you'd call it more fascism, the wedding of big business and government, or a totalitarian state, which is really what it is, "had a far-reaching plan, nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands." These families, just a few families, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. And this book was written 50 years ago. And you see them at the turn of the century, there were only about 7 countries that were not a part of this global banking system. Some of their names were Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, those 3 are now, Syria, Russia and China are loosely, but and that's why they hate Putin, because he's standing up and being independent, and that's why they're persecuting Putin. Now, an interesting thing happened on Tuesday, the day we voted and the day Trump came in. Well, the UN started to ramrod and decided to speed up its plan called Agenda 2030, which is the new version, the updated version of Agenda 21, which is where they've been going in, instead of from a top down, while they work that way, they've also been coming from the bottom up, going into city councils and towns and counties all across the country. I've got a great little story by a Renee, I forget her last name. She talks about dealing with it. This is over in Spokane. They weren't able to stop it, even though they completely showed through documentation and everything that the people promoting this, and of course the other side has unlimited funding, so they have all these people paid while all of us are just doing this for free to try to get the message out. And she said that they were the only one who was fighting this, and in that period, at the same period of time, and this must have been, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago now, and that 500 municipalities and counties adopted that plan. I mean, we're so far gone. We have to take our country back. That's really what's going on. So if we have any time, doesn't look like it, but I've got the featured video, talks about this, or just do your own research on Agenda 2030. This is real. And this lists, the red is the bail-in risk, and the yellow are safer banks. These are throughout the world. And like I've told you before, in Europe, the banks had to have on the books that it was legal for them to come in. I mean, I did tons of stuff when they took it from Cyprus about 3 years ago or so. And they just went into people's account and took money out, because it's not segregated. And that's courtesy, this whole thing really got started, the unraveling, by Bill Clinton when he got rid of the Glass-Steagall Act, which separated the investment and commercial banking. So that's something to look into if you don't know what bail-ins are or anything, and if you have some cash, you might want to be ready, because we're in a lot of trouble. One thing that is coming is some kind of a big shakeout, and this is a spreadsheet for our country. It lists tons of information in one place. It's one click on the left-hand side. You'll see it, where I list out the debt, which is right now at 19.8 trillion. But of course, that is just the one of the debts. It's not the biggest debt. We have unfunded liabilities, which we'll get to, and derivatives. Let's just wait till we look at that. See, here's the national debt. Here's federal spending, almost 4 trillion. The deficit now is 600 billion a year. That's the debt per citizen is 60 grand. The debt per taxpayer is 165,000. Oh, lovely, huh? And this is some money supply numbers up here. It's this last one that I want to talk to. We think this has drastically been reduced, and so we think this is no longer even remotely true, because even when they said it was over around 500 to 700 trillion, now they're saying it's just under 400 trillion. I mean, that's a number that could never be paid off. The banks are more leveraged now than they were. I mean, you can just look that up. I've done tons of stories on that over time. Now this is an interesting number. This 6 trillion is a debt that's held by foreign countries. And now China's threatened to dump its debt. It has about a third of that. But we could handle that, but we've got to stand up. And if we roll over, these people are raping and pillaging us. And it's not going to be good, because they want China to be the new U.S. And that's actually from prophecy and stuff too, about never again in Europe, but over in the Orient. Remember the dragon. What you need to look out for is the false left-right paradigm. They pretend like there's two parties, but there's really just one party, just different sides of the same coin. And that's why real policy changes very little. I mean, look at the stuff the wars that Obama came in as the peace president. I mean, it's a joke what that guy does. Here's JFK, the last guy who took him on, back into the left, but oh yeah. I mean, they just killed him in front of everybody. Anybody who looks at it, if you meet somebody who does not know that was a coup, that he was killed, and not by a lone assassin, I would run away from those people, because at best they're morons and are completely ignorant, or they're just feeding you a line of bull, like GMO food. Monsanto, one of the largest companies that's giving us this poison food, destroying our food production and food by damaging the genome. This is really serious, but yet they have us talking about CO2. And even if you want to believe it, the CO2 story, man-made CO2 as a fraction of the yearly output of CO2 is negligible. It's less than 5%. Look it up. Don't believe me. Look it up. And here's a book written, 63 years ago by a globalist, not someone like me, saying through diet, injections, and injunctions will combine from a very early age to produce the sort of character and the sort of beliefs that the authorities, the elite, consider desirable, and any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. But even that's part of the psych game. And look at how they're just pushing vaccines and shots. Come and get your shots. Come and get your shots. And we'll give you stuff. We'll give you, free shopping and free this and free that. And a delusional mind, and everything will be rosy. If you believe that, you'll believe anything. This is an actual bag of what they put in our drinking supply. Dangerous, poison, toxic by ingestion. And what are some of the target organs? The bones, the central nervous system, and the teeth. I mean, you know, I've got a whole website devoted to this. So you can look it up if you don't know about it. Oh, and here's a warning on Colgate and all the fluoride toothpaste, where it says, right here, where it says that if you take more than, if a child under 6 takes more than is used in brushing, so you know, more than the size of about a pea is swallowed, and of course the kids always swallow it when they're brushing their teeth, you should call the poison control. Hey, go ahead. Nothing to see here, nothing at all. No nation can preserve its freedom in the midst of continual war. False flag operations, what's coming? What's going on? False flag operations. That's what's going on. I mean, I guarantee you, there's something brewing. Speaking the truth in deceitful times is a revolutionary act. And actually, under the Patriot Act, I've done that, I think it's like Section 802. Just what I've said the last 50 minutes would be considered, or 55, whatever, would be grounds for arrest. And with a law that Clinton passed, you could even say, I could get the death penalty. And of course, Hillary doesn't look like she's going to get it, but she would have liked to take me to the fun camps. And I've done a story about the fun camps before. She not only mentioned the fun camps in March of 2015, she also mentioned them 2 weeks ago. Here's Building 7, nothing hit it. Notice how the cringe in the middle, you blow out the center columns, and if you look at pictures of it, it completely folded in on itself. Perfect controlled demolition. And it takes a long time to set that up, because this was a well-planned thing. Here's over 2,500 architects and engineers who've put their livelihood on the line. And of course, we're getting really close. This was 9 years ago that this was on TV. And I've just been showing over the years how it's getting more and more mainstream. And now, I mean, this was from the last one, a survey, 34%, a third of Americans are excited about getting a microchip in their brain. Are you insane? You're insane to watch too much TV. You're insane to put on those glasses. I've shown like Zuckerberg walking around and all of his cadres sitting there looking into the virtual reality goggles. And this is a guy writing about it, one of Obama's top foreign policy advisors. And during the 2012 election cycle, I think his son was advising Romney or something like that. There was a Brzezinski in both camps. But this is a book that he wrote in 1970, you know, between two ages. And he talks about, you know, the surveillance and having, you know, look at this one right here. It says, soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date complete files containing even the most personal information about the person. The second one here. Such a society would be dominated by an elite, unrestrained by traditional values. And what do we see? Look around, my friend. I mean, if you cannot see this, you're not looking, and you're probably not watching anymore. And an easy thing you can do is just tell people to turn into my show, or you can get my stuff 24/7 online, or I link to all these other websites that talk about and give you different information on a wide range of issues. And the take-home message from 9/11 is that it was the anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi's very first protest. You can look that up on the Gandhi Institute. We must be the change that we wish to see in the world. This has to be a revolution of love. Not like the other side who says they're love, but they are hate. They hate not being in power. They worship power. They'll kill for power. They love wars as long as they're in charge of the war. Seek the truth and bear witness to it. This is going to end. This is a legal abortion of a little girl. What was her choice? You could have waited another month or two and given your daughter up for adoption. I mean, care about somebody other than yourself. Black children are an endangered species. You don't hear Black Lives Matter, or anybody who talks about Black Lives Matter, talk about this issue. 266 unarmed black lives each day are killed. Silence. Silence. Jesus sees what's going on. There will be change. The more that he has to do, the worse it'll be for us. And for you people who are leaders, who are lukewarm, which are most of you, whether you're religious or secular, hey, I guarantee you, you're not getting enough goodies here on earth for what you're going to get on the other side for your silence. Remember from Dante's Inferno, the hottest places in hell are reserved for those in a time of crisis who remain silent. Our mother warned us 400 years ago. These times would be worse because those who should have spoken out will fall silent. Our Lord warns us in the book of Revelation, how I wish you were hot or cold, but since you are lukewarm, I spit you out of my mouth. Anyway, prayer and fasting can change the world. Without that, you are pretty much worthless. Here's my website. Here's another good website. Drudge Report, Zero Hedge, Breitbart News, all great stuff. One easy thing you can do, Thursday nights, Channel 77, 8 to 9. Friday at midnight to 1, or Friday afternoon, 1 to 2. There's my email and snail mail. And remember what my Sioux brothers say. Matakawe we seen, we are all related. May God bless you and your family. May you have a good week. May you learn something new this week and pass on some information to your friends and family and co-workers. See you next time. Bye.